Hello. During this podcast, I will try to discuss the following point: culture and international cooperation, why it matters. It's the question of culture, it's the question of the international activity. And we think that within our IDEC PBL project, it is a very important issue to discuss and to deal with. So, why it matters? We can say that probably it's because cooperation includes and deal with communication issues. That's the first start. Second one is the fact that communication is culture and culture is communication. We have learned that from Edward T. Hall during the 50s and 60s. And last step is the fact that international activities include human interaction and so cultural aspects. If we want to go deeper in that subject, the question is then what is culture? Culture has a basic definition. We can say that it's all the material and ideological phenomena that characterize an ethnic group or a nation, a civilization, as opposed to another group or another nation. In a social group, that's to say that there is a set of behavioral characteristics of someone's signs, the language, the gesture, the clothing, that differentiates it from someone belonging to a different social group. It is a very complex concept, and so we can say that culture is a complex conceptual universe. There is no standard definition of a culture. So that's why it's a complex concept. We can say that usually it's a set of various things, among which shared belief, shared values, shared customs, shared behaviors, and shared artifacts that in fact members of a social group use to cope with their world and to others, and it is transmitted from generation to generation by learning. It is not in our DNA, but it is really a social learning process. And so we can quote here Nigel Holden, who said at the beginning of year 2000 that it's a complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by a person as a member of a society. That's the social group. And so, how can we define a culture? Usually, we say that a culture is made of a coherent system whose elements are interrelated and inherent in a set of human activities. We have seen that they are common to a group of individuals and so they are transmitted through socialization phenomena. Those different elements, some of them are visible, that's the explicit manifestation of a culture. It's a tangible and concrete elements like food, language, or its custom. But we have also invisible elements, that's the implicit elements, like perception, feeling, values, norms, elements like that. And several authors say that in order to understand a culture, it's like with an onion, because culture consists of several layers. So, like an onion, in order to understand a culture, it is necessary to peel off layer after layer. The outer layer is the explicit layer, the manifestation of a culture, what is visible. So, things that we can observe, the language, the food, the dress code, greeting, result. The middle layer is the question of the values and the norms of a culture. Those values and norms correspond to what people think is good or bad. And so things that we are using as criteria in order to choose between various possibilities when we are facing a problem, for example, why we are selecting because we think it's good or because we think it's bad. And the last layer is what we call the inner layer. It's the core or the very implicit layer. Here it's the question of the subconscious and basic assumption, the relation to nature. So, in fact, we can see that we have several ways of understanding culture. And cultures, they have been developed in different ways because they have different natural environment, which they have to relate and survive in. Trompenard, Franz Trompenard, that who is a very common author, well-known author in the field of course cultural management. He said that cultures can be distinguished from each other by how they relate to three fundamental problems, three fundamental dimensions: the relation to time, the relation to nature, and the relation to other human beings. So that's to say that issues and problems are common to all mankind, but we are solving them in different ways. And it has some consequences in the creation and the development of corporation and business. So difference among cultures or cultural cluster result in what we call cultural distance. That's the distance between two groups of culture. And so it's showing us the differences among national cultures because we are speaking about international cooperation. So we will deal with that question of cultural differences. And we have a variety but a similarity of the academic production in the field. Research works related to the analysis of the differences and similarities between national cultures are really numerous. There are qualitative and quantitative methods that are using different methods. But if we are going to the fundamentals, we can find Clubdon and Swartbeck, who have said during the 60s they found that national issues can be linked to six fundamental questions. Who are we? So our individual characteristics and qualities. How are we connected or attached to the world? So that's our degree of autonomy versus the degree of dependence. How do we think about and analyze our personal and professional situation? So here it's the role of social and acquired status versus the attributed status. How do we interact with the others? That's our relationship to the other. What is our relationship to time? So that's our perception of the past, the present, and the future. And what is our relationship to space? So it's our meaning of hierarchical distance and proximity between people. As a nutshell, culture is a multinational dimensional concept because we can speak about national culture, organizational culture, professional culture, and it is difficult to grasp and decipher. Different dimensions interact and create a wide variety of multiple intercultural situations. And just remind that culture is often represented as an iceberg, with an emerged part, visible, and a submerged part, deeper and often invisible. The emerged part is easier to observe and can be subject of quantitative surveys, questionnaires, for example, but the immerse part must be analyzed with more qualitative studies in order to understand the phenomena, so that's to say with interviews and observation. So that was what I want to say in the first step, dealing with culture and why it matters. It matters in international cooperation for sure because we are facing differentiation and what we call culture distance in such kind of situation. And it's really important to have an analysis of such kind of dimension. You for sure, I put that picture behind me because the answer is not simple but wrong, but the answer is complex and right. So we have to learn from what academic authors have said about culture, and in order to, in fact, bring more light in such kind of complex environment. So it's what we will see in some podcasts to come. So thanks for listening and see you soon.